Alright, morning everybody. Welcome to another round of Coffee and Questions. What's today's topic? I'm going to talk about finishing and some easy or simple ways, to apply it so you get a really nice finish. Now the first thing I'll tell you is what's the difference between a mediocre finish and a great finish. It's spending a little bit more time, especially in the preparation, of the wood. So I have different projects sitting here, and I've got another one I'm going to show you, and I'll make comments on how I do the finishing. Lots of different things. You have lacquer, you have varnish, shellac, wax, you've got toning, you've got wood dyeing, you've got polyurethanes, you have lots of different vehicles and ways, to accomplish finishing. It just depends on what route you want to take. And I'm going to explore each one of these with you as we go through the video. Whether they're failures or not, sometimes you just experiment and you see what works, and make notes, of course, so that you can remember what you did. But the big thing is the preparation, for the finish itself. So whether it's just an oil finish or whatever you're going to do, I would encourage you to spend the time in the wood prep, and I'll explain that to you. So looking around, this has got a polyurethane finish, and this was hand carved. The signs, of course, were done with a router. The rest of these you see right here were done on a wood lathe, but the concept of what I'm going to explain to you and how I do it would be the same on any of these. So let's pan around, let me show you the project, let me show you how I sand, what I do, and we'll get right to it. Here we go. Okay, so I finished turning this, and what I've done is there's a really bad crack right here. So I put some stick fast. I'll leave you a picture right here. I buy stick fast, like I said in previous videos. It works really well. Not all CA glue is the same, so I know that they've got a really good product, so I buy that, or I buy Star Bond, either one. So I drip some into here to tighten this up. So I stopped with it this thick right here because I don't want to bust this off. So we'll deal with that downstream. It's just one of these things that you can run into that you're going to need to deal with. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to power sand this with 60 grit, and I can make the lathe turn slow, about 250 RPMs, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish shaping this. That way it's not putting a lot of force, and like I said, I just don't want this to crack any farther, because when I part this off, if it has a minor crack on the bottom, I can fill it in, sand it, and it'll still look fine. So I'm going to try to save this as we go forward. Okay, so the next step. Okay, so I sanded this with 60 grit, and like I said, I got out the tool marks, and I'm going to do just a little more shaping right here and here. Then I'm going to switch over to the 80 grit. I'm going to clean this off real good. I'll blow it off with my blowgun, which I have right here. Now this is one of the best blowguns I've ever had. It's made by Coil House, and I'll leave you the link below. Listen to this. This thing will shoot stuff out of your driveway. It shoots things a long distance. It's very powerful. Anyway, I will use that. I'll blow the project off. I'm not going to sand with the grain right now, because this is the 60 grit, and after the 80 grit I'll start sanding with the grain, and I'll show you that. 60 grit is a tool, just like anything else. If you need to use it, use it. I read comments below where, well, if you start with 60 grit, you're kind of a rookie and things like that. To me, it's just a tool, okay? If you need to use it, use it. On this particular thing, I wanted to use it because, like I said, I didn't want this thing to break apart down here. I'll show you the crack here. Let's see. Let me see if I can get a close-up shot. There's a close-up shot of that crack, and like I said, I used that thin CA glue, a few coats of it in there to kind of harden it up for me. We'll go slow, and I'll do the best I can to save the project. Okay, so I'll switch over to the 80 grit, and we'll keep power sanding. Okay, I power sanded with that 80 grit. Now what I'm going to do is I got a cheap pair of reading glasses out of the dollar store, and these are about 2 times or 2.5, I forgot, but I put these on and I go slowly and I look at this real carefully, and I can see right here, take a pencil lightly make a mark. I can see where the grain is kind of really bad right there, so I need to do some sanding there. And I look this all over, find a starting point, and I start slowly looking this over. I see there's some right here, and I spin the piece and I go around it. Those look like the only two bad areas. Now I'm going to stay with the power sanding and the 80 grit, and I'll get out those two bad areas, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I got those two bad areas out, and I power sanded it now with 80 grit, the whole thing. Dollar store glasses, looked it all over, it looks pretty good. Now I'm ready to go to the next grit, which is going to be either 100 or 120. Now you can hand sand this if it's not a big project. I'll show you that, what I do right now, or you can keep power sanding it. Now I would power sand usually up to 150, then I always switch over to hand sanding to go through the rest of the grits. But I'll show you what I mean here. Let me find some 100 or 120. Well, we'll stick with power sanding. I'm going to switch the discs over. We're going to put on 120 grit now, which is right here. I'll go over this whole thing, and then I'll start sanding with the grain. So I'll be back with you in just a sec. Okay, so that was 120. Feels nice and smooth. I use the dollar store glasses again. I look everything over. It magnifies it so you can actually see the scratches from the previous grit. So each time you sand, like if you go from 60 to 80, you want to make sure using the reading store glasses, you can take a real kind of magnified look, and you want to make sure you're getting out the previous grit's scratch marks. So we did that when we went to 80, and I did it when we went to 120. Now I'm looking at it real good, and we're ready to go to 150. Now at 150, for the most part, I'll start sanding by hand. It's just what I like to do. You can keep power sanding, but I like it. So I stopped at 150. I haven't sanded with the grain yet. Now, this grain on this particular wood, this mesquite's porous. It's kind of like mahogany or walnut. And I want to fill in some of that grain and make a flat surface in order for me to put my final finish on. So what I did is I took some seal coat right here. This is 100% wax-free shellac. And I put some in a jar, and I made it about half and half alcohol. Now that takes it from a 2-pound cut to a 1-pound cut. And so that's real thin. It's going to seep into these pores deep, but it'll dry really fast. So I'll put 3 or 4 coats on this over time, but what I'll do is I'll put the first one on right now, and then I'm going to sand some more and look at it, and then I'll put a coat on, sand some more and look at it, and you'll see what I mean here in just a sec. Now watch this. When the first coat goes on, it'll dry almost instantly. I'll use the lathe. Got a good coat on there, and I'll turn back, and I start going with the grain after I shut it off. Now this will be totally dry in about 15 minutes, so I'll be right back with you. Now I'm not using the yellow can. The yellow can has got a shelf life, they say, of about 6 to 8 months. There's no manufacturer date on there. They do that on purpose because they know that people will figure out the shelf life. But because this is 100% wax-free shellac, this has got a much longer shelf life. I've had this can for a year and it's still working perfectly fine. What's the shelf life on it? I don't know. I can just tell you it's a lot longer than using just the regular shellac. Okay, so that's the first coat of that 50-50 mixture, and it dried like boom. It just seeps in, dries almost instantly. Shellac dries fast, alcohol dries almost instantaneous. So I have the first coat on there. I can still, with the magnifying glasses, I can look and I can see the pores still need a little bit more filling. So I'm going to sand this right now with 150 on the lathe. I'm going to put another coat on. I'm going to sand it again with 150, and I'm going to put another coat on. Now after 3 coats, I believe it should, you know, from previous projects, get me fairly close to a level surface. If not, I'll do 4, and then I'll finish going through my grits, and I'll show you how I do the top finish. So I'll be back with you in just a bit after I put on the 3 or 4 coats, and I'll let you know how many. But I'll sand with 150 in between each one until that point. All right, see you in a sec. Okay, let's recap. Where are we? I put 5 coats of that Zinsser seal coat on here. And I didn't steel wool or anything in between, and I really didn't feel any bad nubs or anything. So where we are now is I'm going to start sanding with 220. Now these are thin coats, so I don't have to aggressively sand this. So I'm just going to turn it on, and I'm going to do it by hand. I get a little bit better feel than power sanding right now. And if you look close, you can see some real fine dust coming off of it. So I'm just taking the surface down nice and level at this point. Now I'll feel this all the way around, and with those reading store glasses I'll slowly look at this all the way around, and there's really no imperfections, and it looks like it's filled that grain pretty well. So now I'll start sanding with the grain, and I'm going to go right around this just like this, sanding with the grain. And I got my reading store glasses so I can see I'm getting out the previous grit and even this grit, you know, the sanding marks as I go. Making the surface as nice as I can. Now when I'm done with that, I'll use my blow gun, and I'm going to blow this off, and I'm going to wipe it with a rag, and then I'm going to get some 320 grit. Now I like using an old t-shirt or an old towel after I blow it off, so I'm going to blow it off real quick here. And just to make sure, I'm going to take this piece of towel. I mean, you could even use a shop rag, I suppose. Old t-shirt, whatever you got. I'm going to wipe it down. I'm going to feel it, and it feels very, very, very smooth, almost like glass. So, all right, so now I'm ready to start applying my top finish to it. So what am I going to use? I'm going to use Minwax Wipe On Poly. Let me show you. It's right here. I got the clear gloss Wipe On Poly. And I'll leave you the links below on this stuff. I get it on sale on Amazon quite a bit, so I always am watching for the sales. And I put it in these little hobby bottles. I get these off Amazon too. Again, I'll leave you the links. And I put enough in here. That way I'm minimizing the opening and closing of the can of Wipe On Poly. And it just helps with the shelf life. And it stays pretty good in these little bottles. So anyway, this is what I do. And now I'm going to put my first coat of Wipe On Poly on there. So I got my cloth right here, and I'm going to saturate this pretty good. And I turn the lathe on slow. Just like this. Now this is the first coat of the Wipe On Poly, and then I go ahead and I stop it, and I find a starting point, and I come back. I start wiping with the grain, just like this. And I'm going to go all the way around it. Now if you got the reading glasses on, you're still going to see a little bit of the grain, the pores, a little bit, not very much. And I know that after I put on several coats of this, and it will build up, you'll have that nice flat surface. Okay, and that's it. Now I'm going to let this sit. They say 12 hours. This is probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon my time. I'll let it sit till tomorrow, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'll put another coat on. So I'll be back with you. Okay, it's now the next day, and this is after one coat, and it looks pretty good. And if I feel it, it's still nice and smooth. Now you'll have people tell you you should kind of scuff sand this with 250, 320, and then clean it off and apply another coat. I haven't had a problem applying another coat on top of the existing one, and I don't really feel any nubs or anything. And the other thing is these are very thin coats. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply coat number 2 right now, and we'll go from there. And I'm thinking probably from with the reading glasses and looking at the grain, I'm thinking probably maybe 2, maybe even 3 more coats, and then we'll go from there. So hang on, and we'll put on the other coat real quick. Okay, that's the second coat now. It's totally dry. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put on the third coat. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to put on a fourth coat, and then I may or may not put on the fifth coat. So we'll see how much that grain pattern, you know, like I said, fills in. Same thing, Wipe On Poly. Again, I use the lathe. And I felt this morning. I mean, there's no nubs or anything like that, so I didn't worry about steel wooling it or using 220, 320, anything like that. And people say that you should do that because it gives the finish something to grab onto. I haven't had a problem applying finish over finish like this. And if you think about it, these are real thin coats, so I don't want to keep cutting through the coats. So, and then again, back with the grain. Okay, so like I said, this is the third coat, and I'll do one more coat that way, and then I'll have built up, a decent amount. And then what I'll do, I'll go over it real lightly with either 4/0 steel wool, or I have, some of that Scotch-Brite pad, the real light gray, which is the fine. I'll go over it very gently, and then I'll put on my final coat and we'll be done. So I'll be back with you here in just a bit. Okay, so we're ready for the final coat, and I have my 3M Scotch-Brite pad. This is the fine right here, and so I'm going to, for the final coat, I'm going to lightly scuff this. If there's any nibs or anything on there, this should get rid of it. And I'll stop it, and I'll go with the grain here all the way around it. Then I'm going to clean it off. You can use the blow gun, like I said, that coil house, or you can use a rag, shop towel, I suppose, whatever you have. But I'll go around this real good. I can feel this is incredibly smooth right now. So I think the finish will be great. And with the reading store glasses on, I'll take a real close look, and I'll spin this slowly. And if there's any spots that look like it's a little too built up, you can scuff it down. Like I said, blow gun or a rag. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the rag here. Got the little hobby bottle. Like I said, all the links are below. But anyway, you don't have to use the hobby bottle. I just like using them. And they're inexpensive. Oh, put this on slow. All right, find a starting point. Start wiping with the grain. You have time with this stuff, so you don't have to hurry. No runs, no sags. Just go around the whole project. Okay, that's it. And I'll conclude the video here. That's all I'm going to do. This will give it a really, really nice finish. In the future videos, I'll show you how I part it off of the lathe, but the point of the video is to show you a finishing technique that I use. And I think it turns out really nice. All right, I hope you click subscribe. I hope you keep following me. We will do different kinds of finishes going forward, and I'll show you what I do. If you can think of something better, go ahead and drop it in the comment below, or if you're wondering about something. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. You folks have a great day. Bye-bye.